Welcome. You're listening to Voice in the Dark. Something was wrong. One morning, John Sullivan found himself walking along a street downtown. He could not explain what he was doing there, or how he got there, or where he had been earlier. He didn't even know what time it was. He saw a woman walking toward him, and stopped her. "I'm sorry, miss. I believe I've forgotten my watch," he said, and smiled. "Can you tell me the time?" When she saw him, she screamed and ran. Then John Sullivan noticed that other people were afraid of him. When they saw him coming, they flattened themselves against a building, or ran across the street to stay out of his way. "There must be something wrong with me," John Sullivan thought. "I'd better go home." He hailed a taxi, but the driver took one look at him and sped away. John Sullivan did not understand what was going on, and it scared him. "Maybe someone at home can come and get me," he thought. He found a telephone and called his wife, but a voice he did not recognize answered. Is Miss Sullivan there?" he said. "No, she's at a funeral," the voice said. "Mr. Sullivan was killed yesterday in an accident downtown." The Wreck. Fred and Jean went to the same high school, but they met the first time at the Christmas dance. Fred had come by himself, and so had Jean. Soon Fred decided that Jean was one of the nicest girls he had ever met. They danced together most of the evening. At 11 o'clock, Jean said, "I have to leave now. Can you give me a ride?" "Sure," he said. "I've got to go home, too." "I accidentally drove my car into a tree on my way over here," Jean said. "I guess I wasn't paying attention." Fred drove her to the head of Brady Road. It was in a neighborhood he didn't know very well. "Why don't you drop me off here?" Jean said. "The road up ahead is in really bad condition. I can walk from here." Fred stopped the car and held out some tinsel. "Have some," he said. "I got it at the dance." "Thank you," she said. "I'll put it in my hair." And she did. "Would you like to go out sometime? To a movie or something?" Fred asked. "That would be fun," Jean said. After Fred drove off, he realized that he did not know Jean's last name or her telephone number. "I'll go back," he thought. "The road can't be that bad." He drove slowly down Brady Road through thick woods, but there wasn't a sign of Jean. As he came around a curve, he saw the wreckage of a car ahead. It had crashed into a tree and had caught fire. Smoke was still rising from it. As Fred made his way to the car, he could see someone trapped inside, crushed against the steering column. It was Jean. In her hair was the Christmas tinsel he had given her. One Sunday morning. Ida always went to the 7 o'clock Sunday morning service at her church. Usually she heard the clanging of the church bells while she was eating breakfast, but this morning she had heard them while she was still in bed. "That means I'm late," she thought. Ida jumped out of bed, quickly dressed, and left without eating or looking at the clock. It was still dark outside, but it was usually dark at this time of year. Ida was the only one on the street. The sound she heard was the clatter of her shoes on the pavement. Everybody must already be in church, she thought. Ida took a shortcut through the cemetery. Then she quietly slipped into the church and found a seat. The service had already begun. When she caught her breath, Ida looked around. The church was filled with people she had never seen before. But the woman next to her did look familiar. Ida smiled at her. "It's Josephine Kerr," she thought. "But she's dead. She died a month ago." Suddenly, Ida felt uneasy. She looked around again. As her eyes began to adjust to the dim light, Ida saw some skeletons in suits and dresses. "This is a service for the dead," Ida thought. "Everybody here is dead, except me." Ida noticed that some of them were staring at her. They looked angry, as if she had no business there. Josephine Kerr leaned toward her and whispered, "Leave right after the benediction, if you care for your life." When the service came to an end, the minister gave his blessing. "The Lord bless you and keep you," he said. "The Lord makes his face to shine upon you." Ida grabbed her coat and walked quickly toward the door. When she heard footsteps behind her, she glanced back. Several of the dead were coming toward her. Others were getting up to join them. "The Lord lift up his countenance to you," the minister went on. Ida was so frightened, she began to run. Out the door she ran, with a pack of shrieking ghosts at her heels. "Get out!" one of them screamed. Another shouted, "You don't belong here!" and ripped her coat away. As Ida ran through the cemetery, a third grabbed the hat from her head. "Don't come back!" it screamed, and shook its arm at her. By the time Ida reached the street, the sun was rising, and the dead had disappeared. Did this really happen? Ida asked herself. Or had I been dreaming? That afternoon, one of Ida's friends brought over her coat and hat, for what was left of them. They had been found in the cemetery, torn to shreds.